Hey, look, somebody asked me a question. I better answer it.
Hey, it's Aaron from AaronOnAutos.com, and today I have a question from Jeffrey. Jeffrey hit me up on my website. Wanted to know, I'm going to read this one because it's kind of long, but it needs to be. What percentage of mechanics take advantage of non-mechanically inclined folks and overcharge them for work on their cars? So that's a good question because when you don't know about something, you tend to assume the worst. So if you don't know a lot about mechanics and you have to take a car to the shop because there's something wrong with it, and you probably don't even know exactly what's wrong with it, you will probably be under the assumption that you are at least under threat of being ripped off. So the person who knows more than you basically gets to tell you whatever they want, and you have to just go along with it because you don't know any different. And that leaves this big open spot where you could be taken advantage of. So, how often does that actually happen? I honestly don't think it happens that much. I think it's more likely to happen in a less established business than it is in a more established business. And by that I mean, if you're going to Joe Rencher on the corner who just works out of his garage at his house and may or may not, whatever, he would more likely have the temptation to overcharge than would Bob or Cindy at the big garage downtown that's been there for 10 years and has a lot of good business. So the more established business is less likely because they're less likely to try to rip people off, because the worst thing they can do for themselves is create a bad reputation. Especially in this business. If you're a mechanic, a bad reputation is a great way to not have any business. There's always a dearth of mechanics versus vehicles. So there's always fewer people working on them than there are vehicles to be worked on. But on the flip side of that, a lot of that is because there are a lot of people with the know-how, but not very many who are willing to establish a business. And there are a lot of them. I can name a couple just in my area here that just have reputations for not being good. Whether they're not good at the job, or they're not good at taking care of you, or they're not good because they tend to overcharge. Whatever the case may be. So using my illustration, let's say you have Cindy at the big shop, and she's got, say 3 bays. There's maybe half a dozen people working there. It's an established business. It's doing well. And it's got a good reputation. Cindy is much less likely to rip you off than is Bob on the corner, who just works out of his garage, and maybe you came to him and you said, "Hey, I got a problem here with my car. I need you to look at it. Can you figure out what's wrong with it?" And he's like, "Sure." Meanwhile, he goes into his home office that night after dinner, and he's looking at his bills, and he realizes he's got a $400 boat payment coming, and he's going, maybe the problem with their car is $400. See how that kind of works? It's possible that's going on. I'm not saying it happens every time. I'm not saying but it's more likely to happen in that instance. On the flip side, you are much more likely to have an established relationship with Bob on the corner, and you are much more likely to have a friendly rapport, or even know the guy outside of that work, which is a boon. That negates everything I just said. You're much less likely to get ripped off by someone you know than you are by anybody else. So that's kind of the gist. That's how I think of these things. My point, I think, is that most people are honest. Our society functions because almost everybody in it is honest. We don't want to rob people, rip them off, hurt them, that's why our society functions, is because as humans, we generally are good people. Occasionally you have the bad apple, or you have somebody who's in a desperate situation, and that changes things. But for the most part, we're fine. And so most of the time, you are very likely not to be ripped off. No no matter who you go to. So if you do prefer to go to Bob on the corner to fix your car, I don't fault you for that. I think it's great. I think that along with going to him, you should also be creating a relationship with him. You know, coming over with donuts, hanging out with him, coming over to talk about your car, looking at it, bring some beer, whatever. You know, just kind of build a relationship with that person. You should, because it's probably your neighbor. Just saying. Something we've lost in our society in the most part. It's one of the reasons I live in Wyoming, by the way. But, because we haven't lost that here. But, the point is, if you do prefer the small local guy, create a relationship with the small local guy. Don't just go to him, get it fixed, and then never not see him again until something else needs to be fixed. Build some sort of relationship there. Same goes with even bigger shops if they're local. Get to know them. The little town I used to live in, I knew the lady at the front desk. I knew the guy who owned it. I knew the chief mechanic. I knew a couple of the other mechanics. I knew a lot of people at that shop. All right. So, you got questions, obviously. So you need to ask them. You can hit me up down here in the comments below here. You can find me on aarononautos.com up there. You can find me on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, wherever. Just tag me if you do and ask me your questions. And I will do my best to answer. How's that? All right. This has been Aaron, aarononautos.com. Talk to you again soon.